Hotel management, the role of the manager. So what is managing? Henry Fayol was the first person to identify elements or functions of management. He defined 5 functions: planning, organising, commanding, coordinating, and controlling. Fayol argued that these functions were universal, in the sense that all managers performed them in the course of their jobs, whether the managers worked in business, military, government, religious, or philanthropic undertakings. They defined the process of management as distinct from accounting, finance, marketing, and other business functions. He defined planning in terms of forecasting future conditions, setting objectives, and developing means to attain objectives. He recognized that effective planning must also take into account unexpected contingencies that might arise, and did not advocate rigid and inflexible plans. Fayol defined organising as making provision for the structuring of activities and relationships within the firm, and also the recruiting, evaluation, and training of personnel. According to Fayol, commanding as a managerial function concerned the personal supervision of subordinates and involved inspiring them to put forth unified effort to achieve objectives. Fayol emphasised the importance of managers understanding the people who worked for them, setting a good example, treating subordinates in a manner consistent with firm policy, delegating and communicating through meetings and conferences. He saw the function of coordination as harmonising all of the various activities of the firm. Most of the later experts did not retain Fayol's coordination function as a separate element of management, but regarded it as a necessary component of all the other management functions. Fayol defined the control function in terms of ensuring that everything occurs within the parameters of the plan and accompanying principles. The purpose of control was to identify deviations from objectives and plans and to take corrective action. Managing tasks and people. A number of the functions listed by Fayol concern the management of tasks. Planning, controlling, organising, and coordinating are closely interlinked in the process of mobilising and managing the resources of the organisation: labour, time, information, materials, and finance. You may have noticed that Fayol's framework does not give particular priority to the people aspects of management. By including commanding, however, he does recognise the important fact that managers perform their functions and achieve their objectives or not with and through the efforts of other people. This function is sometimes referred to as staffing. You may feel that Fayol's term commanding barely does justice to this process. Later writers, recognising more fully the interpersonal as opposed to purely administrative dimensions of management, pointed out that management involves many complex human relations functions. Managers are also leaders. Team members may be willing to comply with the procedures and rules of the task, but they will arguably be more effective if they can be encouraged to commit themselves to its objectives. Managers and communicators. Managers are collectors, disseminators, and users of information. Leadership requires communication skills such as the ability to inspire, influence, persuade, or resolve conflict. Managers mobilise human resource. Managers are responsible for obtaining, retaining, developing, allocating where necessary, and shedding labour resources. Managers have superiors, peers, and colleagues. Managers have to maintain cooperative relationships with other managers and individuals not within their power to command, in order to obtain resources and achieve shared objectives. Managers represent the organisation to other people inside and outside the organisation. The management transformation process. We can describe an organisation as receiving inputs from the environment, transforming them, and then exporting the outputs to the environment. The diagram below indicates how the various inputs are transformed through the managerial functions of planning, organising, staffing, leading, and controlling. The management transformation process. We can describe an organisation as receiving inputs from the environment, transforming them, and then exporting the outputs to the environment. The diagram below indicates how the various inputs are transformed through the managerial functions of planning, organising, staffing, leading, and controlling. The management transformation process. Inputs. The inputs from the external environment may include people, capital, and managerial skills, as well as technical knowledge and skills. In addition, various groups of people will make demands on the organisation. For example, employees want higher pay, more benefits, and job security. On the other hand, consumers demand safe and reliable products at reasonable prices. Suppliers want assurance that their products will be bought. Shareholders want not only a high return on their investment, but also security for their money. Government depends on taxes being paid, but also expect the organisation to comply with its laws. Similarly, the community demands that enterprises be good citizens, providing the maximum number of jobs with a minimum amount of pollution. It is clear that many of these demands are diverse, and it is the manager's job to resolve conflicts and integrate these aims. The managerial transformation process. It is the task of managers to transform the inputs in an effective and efficient manner into outputs. Of course, the transformation process can be viewed from different perspectives. Writers on management look on the transformation process in terms of their particular approaches to management. For example, writers belonging to the Human Behaviour School focus on interpersonal relationships. In this text, we will use the managerial functions of planning, organising, staffing, leading, and controlling as a framework for organising managerial knowledge. The communication system. Communication is essential to all phases of the managerial process. It integrates the managerial functions. For example, the objectives set in planning are communicated so that the appropriate organisation structure can be devised. Communication is essential in the selection, appraisal, and training of managers to fill the roles in this structure. Similarly, effective leadership and the creation of an environment conducive to motivation depend on communication. It is through communication that the manager determines whether events and performance conform to plans. It links the organisation with its external environment. It is through the communication system that the needs of customers are identified. This knowledge enables the firm to provide products and services at a profit. Similarly, it is through an effective communication system that the organisation becomes aware of competition and other potential threats and constraining factors. Feedback. In the systems model of operational management, we show some of the outputs becoming inputs again. For example, the satisfaction of employees becomes an important human input. Similarly, profits, the surplus of income over costs, are reinvested in cash and capital goods, such as machinery, equipment, buildings, and stock. Outputs. Although the kinds of outputs will vary with the enterprise, They usually include many of the following: products, services, profits, satisfaction, and integration of the goals of various claimants to the enterprise. The functions of management. Planning. Planning is the function of management that involves setting objectives and determining a course of action for achieving these objectives. It requires that managers be aware of environmental conditions facing their organisation and forecast future conditions. It also requires that managers be good decision makers. Planning is a process consisting of several steps. The process begins with environmental scanning, which simply means that planners must be aware of the critical contingencies facing their organisation in terms of economic conditions, their competitors, and their customers. Planners must then attempt to forecast future conditions. These forecasts form the basis for planning. The success of a plan, therefore, lies in the manager's ability to forecast future situations correctly and accurately. Planners must establish objectives, which are statements of what needs to be achieved and when. Planners must then identify alternative courses of action for achieving objectives. After evaluating the various alternatives, planners must make decisions about the best courses of action for achieving objectives. They must then formulate necessary steps and ensure effective implementation of plans. Finally, planners must constantly evaluate the success of their plans and take corrective action when necessary. The diagram shows management planning. There are many different types of plans and planning. Strategic planning involves analysing competitive opportunities and threats, as well as the strengths and weaknesses of the organisation, and then determining how to position the organisation to compete effectively in their environment. Strategic planning has a long time frame, often 3 years or more. Strategic planning generally includes the entire organisation and includes formulation of objectives. Strategic planning is often based on the organisation's mission, which is its fundamental reason for existence. An organisation's top management most often conducts strategic planning. Tactical planning. This is intermediate range planning that is designed to develop relatively concrete and specific means to implement the strategic plan. Middle-level managers often engage in tactical planning. Tactical planning often has a 1 to 3 year time horizon. Operational planning generally assumes the existence of objectives and specifies ways to achieve them. Operational planning is short-range planning that is designed to develop specific action steps that support the strategic and tactical plans. Operational planning usually has a very short time horizon, from 1 week to 1 year. The process of planning thus involves the following activities: laying down objectives, developing planning preconditions, searching alternative courses of action, evaluation of various alternatives and formulation of a plan, formulating policies and procedure, and preparing schedules, programs, and budgets. Organising. Once planning is effected, the people in the organisation have to be organised. It is an important activity by which management brings together the manpower and material resources for the accomplishment of predetermined goals. Organising is the process of establishing relationships among the members of the organisation. This relationship is created in the form of authority and responsibility. Each member in the organisation is assigned a specific duty to perform and is granted the corresponding authority to do it. The process of organising involves the following activities: identifying the activities involved in achieving the objectives, grouping the activities in a logical pattern, assigning the activities to employees, delegating authority and fixing responsibility, and coordinating the authority-responsibility relationships of various activities. The purpose of an organisation structure is to help in creating an environment for human performance. Although the structure must define the tasks to be done, the roles so established must also be designed in the light of the abilities and motivations of the people available. Designing an effective organisation structure is not an easy managerial task. Many problems are encountered in making structures fit situations, including both defining the kind of jobs that must be done and finding the people to do them. Staffing. Staffing involves filling and keeping filled the positions in the organisation structure. This is done by identifying workforce requirements, assessing the people available, and recruiting, selecting, placing, promoting, appraising, planning the careers of, compensating, and training or otherwise developing both candidates and current job holders to accomplish their tasks effectively and efficiently. Staffing is considered as a separate function in view of the need to employ the right types of people and develop them for the well-being of the organisation. It is concerned with the human resources of an organisation and involves the following: human resources planning, that is, determining the number and the kind of personnel required, recruitment of those personnel, selection of the most suitable personnel, placement and orientation of employees, training and development of employees, proper evaluation of employees, transfer, promotion, determination and layoff of employees. Leading. Leading means influencing people so that they will contribute to the organisation and group goals to accomplish desired results. It consists of issuing orders and instructions, guiding, counselling, and supervising subordinates in the execution of plans. Effective leadership requires the manager to motivate subordinates, communicate efficiently, and actively use power. If managers are effective leaders, their subordinates will be enthusiastic about exerting effort toward the attainment of organisational objectives. To become capable at leading, managers must first understand their subordinates' personalities, values, attitudes, and emotions. Therefore, the behavioural sciences have made many contributions to the understanding of this function of management. Personality research and studies of job attitudes provide important information as to how managers can most beneficially lead subordinates. Controlling. Controlling is the process of seeing whether the activities have been performed in conformity with the plans. It helps the management to get its policies implemented and to take corrective actions if performance is not in accordance with the planned objectives. The process of controlling involves the following: determination of standards for measuring work performance, the measurement of actual performance, comparing actual performance with the standard, finding variance between the actual and the standard and the reasons for the same, and taking corrective action to ensure attainment of objectives. The measurement of performance can be done in several ways, depending on the performance standards, including financial statements, sales reports, production results, customer satisfaction, and formal performance appraisals. Managers at all levels engage in the managerial function of controlling to some degree. Controlling involves ensuring that performance does not deviate from standards. Controlling consists of 3 steps, which include establishing performance standards, comparing actual performance against standards, and taking corrective action when necessary. Performance standards are often stated in monetary terms such as revenue, costs, or profits, but may also be stated in other terms such as units produced, the number of defective products, or levels of customer service. The managerial function of controlling should not be confused with control in the behavioural or manipulative sense. This function does not imply that managers should attempt to control or manipulate the personalities, values, attitudes, or emotions of their subordinates. Instead, this function of management concerns the manager's role in taking necessary actions to ensure that the work-related activities of subordinates are consistent with and contributing toward the accomplishment of organisational and departmental objectives. Effective controlling requires the existence of plans, since planning provides the necessary performance standards or objectives. Controlling also requires a clear understanding of where responsibility for deviations from standards lies. Two traditional control techniques are the budget and the performance audit. Although controlling is often thought of in terms of financial criteria, managers must also control production, operations processes, procedures for delivery of services, compliance with company policies, and many other activities within the organisation. Coordination. Some authorities consider coordination to be a separate function of the manager. It seems more accurate, however, to regard it as the essence of being a manager, for achieving harmony among individual efforts toward the accomplishment of group goals. Each of the managerial functions is an exercise contributing to coordination. Coordination is important because the organisation is a collection of individuals and groups, each with their own interests and goals. These must be given a unified, common direction if the organisation as a whole is to achieve its objectives. The organisation's activities involve a variety of people, tasks, resources, and technologies. All of these will have to be at the right place at the right time and working in the right way if smooth operations are to be maintained. Some activities of the organisation will depend on the successful and timely completion of other activities. Someone needs to ensure that such interrelationships are taken into account in the overall activity of the organisation. Some activities of the organisation will be higher priority than others. Someone needs to ensure that there is an overall balance between urgent and high priority activities and routine activities on which the organisation nevertheless depends. Resources, be they human, material and financial, are limited and possibly even scarce. Different units in the organisation are, in effect, in competition for their slice of the resources available. Someone has to balance their demands and the organisation's priorities, ensure that overall resources are used efficiently and effectively in pursuit of the organisation's goals. Functions at different management levels. Managers at different levels of the organisation engage in different amounts of time in the four managerial functions: planning, organising, leading and controlling. The degree to which top, middle and supervisory managers perform each of these functions is shown in the diagram below. Note that top managers do considerably more planning, organising and controlling than do managers at any other level. However, they do much less leading. Most of the leadership is done by first-line managers. Top-level managers spend more time on planning and organising than lower-level managers. Leading takes a great deal of time for first-line supervisors. The difference in the amount of time spent on controlling varies only slightly from managers at various levels. The role of management. Mintzberg argued that the management process set out what managers have to achieve and how, but it does not as such describe what managers actually do. Mintzberg defined what managers do in terms of three key roles. The informational role involves checking data received and passing it on to the relevant people, as well as acting as the spokesperson for his or her team in relation to other teams or the line manager. The interpersonal role, so acting as a leader for his or her own team and linking with the managers of other teams. The decisional role. It is in this role that managers actually do what we perceive as managing. Interpersonal roles. Mintzberg recognized that management is an interpersonal process and outlined three basic roles which managers adopt in relation to other people. Figurehead, performing ceremonial and social duties as the organization's representative, for example at conferences. This is mainly the role of senior figures. Leader, selecting and training team members and uniting and inspiring the team to achieve its objectives. Liaison, communicating with people outside the work unit, for example, in interdepartmental meetings or the organization, building up an informal system of information exchange. Informational roles. According to Mintzberg, the manager does not leave meetings or hang up the telephone in order to go back to work. In a large part, communication is his work. A manager is likely to have a wider network of contacts within and outside the organisation than his subordinates, so he is the best person to gather and spread information. Monitor. This is receiving information from the environment and from within the organisation. Much of this may be obtained informally, say from chatting with contacts or subordinates. Managers do not rely solely on formal reports. Disseminator. This is passing on information to subordinates. Spokesman. Transmitting information to interested parties outside the work unit or organisation. Decisional roles. The manager's formal authority and access to information puts him in a strong position to take decisions. Entrepreneur. Being a fixer, mobilizing resources to get things done and to seize opportunities. Disturbance handler. Coping with the unexpected, rectifying mistakes, and getting operations and relationships back on course when necessary. Resource allocator. So distributing limited resources in the way that will be most efficiently achieve defined objectives. Negotiator, bargaining, for example, for resources and influence. Managerial behaviour, style of behaviour. It is the responsibility of managers to manage and achieve results through the efforts of other people. Managers are only likely to be effective if they adopt an appropriate style of behaviour. The general movement towards flatter organisation structures and greater employee involvement places more an emphasis on integrating rather than a traditional controlling style of management. The style of managerial leadership is a function of the manager's attitudes towards people and assumptions about human nature and behaviour. For example, McGregor's Theory X and Theory Y. Manager's attitude. Douglas McGregor put forward two sets of assumptions about human nature and behaviour at work, commonly known as Theory X and Theory Y. He believed that the style of management adopted is a function of the manager's attitudes towards people and assumptions about human nature and behaviour. Theory X managers believe their employees are basically lazy, need constant supervision and direction, and are indifferent to organisational needs. Theory Y managers believe their workers enjoy their work, are self-motivated, and are willing to work hard to meet both personal and organisational goals. These two sets of assumptions are obviously fundamentally different. Theory X is pessimistic, static, and rigid. Control is primarily external, i.e., it is imposed on the subordinate by the superior, whereas in contrast, Theory Y is optimistic, dynamic, and flexible, with an emphasis on self-direction and is the integration of the individual needs with organisational demands. There is little doubt that each set of assumptions will affect the way managers carry out their managerial functions and activities. Theory Z. W.G. Auchi's Theory Z emphasised a more democratic approach to management and the adoption of human resources policies that encourage commitment, participation, and as a result lead to innovation, better performance, and flexibility to meet the changing needs of the market economy. Much like McGregor's theories X and Y, Theory Z makes certain assumptions about workers. These include the notion that workers have a very well developed sense of order, discipline, moral obligation to work hard, and a sense of cohesion with their fellow workers, tend to want to build cooperative and intimate working relationships with those that they work for and with, as well as the people that work for them. People are more participative and capable of performing many and varied tasks. Workers highly value a working environment in which such things as family, cultures and traditions and social institutions are regarded as equally important as the work itself. Such as these have a very well developed sense of order, discipline, moral obligation to work hard, and a sense of cohesion with their fellow workers. Workers can be trusted to do their jobs to their utmost ability, so long as management can be trusted to support them and look out for their well-being. Management by objectives. The functions of objectives include planning. Objectives define what the plan is about. Responsibility. Objectives define the responsibilities of managers and departments. Integration. Objectives should support one another and be consistent. This integrates the efforts of different departments. Motivation. The first step is to know what is to be done. Objectives must be created for all areas of performance. And evaluation. Performance is assessed against objectives and control exercised. Management by objectives, or MBO, is a scheme of planning and control that provides coordination of short-term plans with long-term plans and goals, the plans and commitment of junior with senior management, the efforts of different departments. It is a participative approach to the activities involved in planning, organisation, direction and control of work. Basically, the approach involves the systematic setting of targets and checking of progress for each management position.